Well, I mean, relative to the rest of the country, I had a very good life. My father was educated, he was industrious, he was a lawyer. He made a decent living for us. It could have been much better had it not been for a lot of oppression, both economic and political. This is a man who spent a lot of resources running for the Senate 3 times, won all 3 times, but the position was given to someone else who the government felt comfortable with. He lost his job as superintendent of the county because he disagreed with Talbot on some policy matters. The first one was when there was the LAMCO strike in 1973. The justice minister and the labor minister went into Nimba County and sent to the barracks for soldiers to go and crush the strike. And the commander came to him because as superintendent of the county, he was the commander-in-chief of the forces. And he said, first of all, I don't take orders from the justice minister, I take them directly from the president or the minister of justice, minister of local government. And secondly, I don't see the justification for sending soldiers to go and crush a labor dispute, and LAMCO has not told us that there's any, crime or violence going on. So, and then after he lost his job, they suppressed him economically. He started a logging company, and first before he started a logging company, he leased land to Talk Lumber Company, which was, operated. Ed Padmore, who was a nephew of Talbot from his wife's side, is one of the owners and operators. So they leased the land, and Talk Lumber Company never paid a dime, and he chased after him for ages. It wasn't possible for him to collect that. I remember one time he was going after $25,000, and in 1974, $25,000 was a lot of money. Then he joined with an Italian to start their own company, and as soon as they got their first consignment, they went and Talk Lumber Company filed a protest that my father's company trespassed on their land. Imagine a man who's politically unpopular, has fallen out with the president, has his own forest, but he leaves that to go and trespass on the president's nephew's forest. So the forestry development people came in to investigate, and their finding was that no, he didn't trespass, but the trees are on Talk Lumber Company's concession. Basic translation is you own the land, you don't own the trees. There's no such thing in Liberian law. You own the land, you own everything from 6 feet below and up. It is a minimum right 6 feet and deeper that you don't own. So there was a lot of that economic oppression that caused our lifestyle to not be what it was in terms of truly achieving the potential. That's why I spoke of economic and political decentralization of power.
Well, you had a fairly comfortable life.
Yes.
And if you work hard in Liberia at that time, you could live that kind of life.
Yes.
Okay. Then you came to the States in 1978. At what point did you start to get involved in the situation in Liberia, in the States?
I've always been deeply interested in what's happening in my country. In the early 80s, I started an import-export. The component of the agitation of the war in the 80s was something that I did not participate in, didn't feel was the right thing to do. In fact, most people who actually participated in those things did it in secrecy. It is after the fact, when the war was launched, before a lot of this information began to be revealed to me.
So at what point did you start to get involved in any other activity?
In what way? When you say get involved, I've always been involved.
Like you said, in 1980, you were not involved in that. The 1980 incursion, you were not involved in that?
No.
Okay. So which one were you involved with?
Are you talking about, there are several levels of involvement, so please, let's make it clear.
The different crises. We had a coup, we first had a rice riot. Mm-hmm. Were you in any way involved in that?
No, I was here then.
You were here?
Yes.
And then they had an association year. that had people taken from here by topple, carried to Liberia, and they were part of that rice riot.
Uline, okay.
Okay. Were you a part also of that organization at that time?
No, I was in Michigan then, and our organization was not a member, wasn't affiliated with ULI at that time.
Okay, and then we came to the coup by Do, which you said the military leader was Jebo. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay. Were you involved in that?
No?
Okay. And then we came to the wars, the different wars. Were you involved in any of those?
No, the only involvement I had is what I explained to you with the Nimba Redemption Council.
Okay. Nimba Redemption Council was one of those fighting forces, the way of fighting force that also committed atrocities in the country. And so I want to repeat one question that Commissioner Boo asked. As you sit here, can you consider yourself by the fact that you supported by agreeing to be the speaker for that council, supported that incursion into the country? You can be known as a, how you call it, alleged perpetrator?
I did not have command or control responsibilities. I can take responsibility if someone was affected, that an organization that was affected, that I was affiliated with, caused that impact, and I can, definitely take responsibility for that affiliation. But the command and control of that organization rested with the government, the interim government. The purpose of that association of that organization was to launch along with ecomog. That's what we were told. That's what I believed. That's why I signed on, that we will be supporting a deployment of ecomog. The fact that ecomog did not deploy was not known to me at the time I made those statements. I was here outside of all of the spheres of what happened at the time the actions actually did happen. And our views of what should have been done was misled. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, you said that most of the activities in the country were supported first by maybe the Nimba organizations here, then the Mandingos organizations here, and then the Congo. Did you in any way support any one of those organizations?
Besides the Nimba Redemption Council, no.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dwanyen. As you would very well understand, this is an exercise intended to provide clarity, illuminate the truth, and expose whatever inconsistencies, fallacies that may be contained in the narratives of our history. In that regard, I would like to ask you, what did the command structure, the command and control structure of the NRC, Nimba Redemption Council, what did it look like? Who were the top commanders? Where exactly in Liberia it operated, if it did operate at all? And let me stop there for now.
Okay, well, there was a board which was a sort of decision-making body that had Joseph Guanu, John Son, Harry Yuan, Tiawan Gongo, and the late General Fangalu. Then they had an executive committee that was chaired by Joseph Daquan. You had Peter Kerper, Yasu Odolie, Johnson Guayclo, and who was there were? There were a few others whose names is not coming to mind right now. But those were the sort of the prominent actors, and I was on that committee as well, reporting to the board. On the military side, the person who was to coordinate them to work with ECOMOG was Kerper Kako.
Cooper, please.
Kerper.
The full name?
Kerper is the first name, and Kako is spelled, I believe, Karkor.
He was the the field commander,
Yeah, he was the leader of, yeah,
the military wing.
yeah. And then you had Lombei, Lombei. And last name is Bear, Bher.
Say
He was a deputy to him.
the last name you say?
Bher.
Where?
And the second, you had a two-part question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where they were kind of straddled along the border in the forest, awaiting the arrival of ECOMOG, so that they could link up with the ECOMOG deployment. And when the announcement was made, and there was no ECOMOG, they began to fish them out, and their positions were discovered, is what I've been told. And so that's when they were engaged in the combat with the
The NPFL?
with the NPFL. Yeah, and most of that, I think it happened around the Dule area, in the forest behind Kerper and places like that. Yeah,
Where did this body get the training?
they were ex-fighters from the NPFL. They all were ex-fighters. Some of them had trained with the NPFL in Libya.
Where did they get the arms and ammunition? From where?
They really didn't have any. They were waiting for ECOMOG deployment, as I said.
So how were they able to engage the NPFL in combat?
Well, I think from what they had a few single barrels and things like that, but in terms of military hardware, heavy weapons and stuff like that, they didn't have it. They bought a few pieces from Taylor's forces who came onto the side, but they were very lightly armed. They were not prepared for combat at all.
What would you say was the strength?
I don't have, any direct hold on the number that would actually, I think the ones that had armed may not even been more than a dozen. Yeah.
And
Actually, Amos Cocker would be a good person to answer that question.
you said it,
Amos Cocker or Zaulos Wagila, those are two people who I know were sent from Monrovia along with Yasuo Dahlia. White Dahlia. Yasuo Dahlia, White Dahlia.
No.
Oh, Zaulos Wagila.
Saus Wangla?
It spells Zuagle, I think, yeah.
you said the theater of operations was was in the Dole area, along the Liberian, Guinean, or Liberian Ivorian border.
I think Dule is probably closer to the Ivorian side, yeah.
And what would you say was the extent to which they were able to capture, if you may say so, territory in Liberia? And for how long did they hold on to such territory?
I don't know that they captured any territory to hold on to, really. That has not been the information that's come to me.
Did they take any prisoners?
Not that I know of.
And in the area in which you operated, did they capture any village or towns?
Well, when they were attacked, I think they did launch a counterattack on Dule. That part I know about Dule, but I don't know that they captured it or held it. Because from what Amos was saying, that the engagement lasted for about a week, and then they felt that it couldn't stand it, and it took off, and it fled.
So how long you would say they were operational until they petered out?
About a week.
Just about a week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Your disengagement with the NPRC, at what point did that come about?
You mean it?
The
you mean
Nimba
NRC
Redemption
or
Council,
NPRC?
NRC.
It was shortly after my arrival in Monrovia, about late March. I think it was sometime in April or May when we found out for sure that there will be no deployment. We were asked to, we were sort of given some sense that it was possible to continue the effort for the deployment of ecomog. And so Guanu and I took a trip to Guinea to sort of continue that dialogue and see if it was still possible to have the ecomog deployment to take place. So in terms of that, but shortly after that period, when we were convinced that ecomog was not going to take that initiative, which was, that decision was made clear, sort of right around the Cotonou peace accords.
In your testimony, you also said that Guanu and Sawyer asked ECOMOG to give them some money.
That's what I was
And then they
told.
were going to handle the situation. Is that why ECOMOG didn't engage and collaborate with the Nimba Redemption Council?
No, what I found out after the fact is that when ECOMOG had changed their mind that they couldn't do it because of their logistical reasons, then they came up and said, we have Plan B, and this is our Plan B.
And you also talk about Border Patrol, a death squad that was used during Taylor regime. Do you remember the commander or the name of some of the people that are on Border Patrol?
He was the one person that name stood out and that was named, but my understanding is he came with about 15 to 20 people that he had in his entourage when they did the attack. So
what's the name of that person that stood up?
The who?
The name. Say one person name stood up.
The Border Patrol. Yeah.
Individual.
Well, Border Patrol is an individual. That's his fighting name. It's a person. That's his fighting name is Border Patrol, and his real name is Menton. And if you say Border Patrol, people will know who you're talking about. Okay, no, yeah, there was an individual who was a leader, one of the leaders of Taylor's death squad. If you heard the name Paul Vey, but I was not told that Paul Vey was in this group. But I was told that Border Patrol, that's his Mending, AKA Border Patrol, was the leader of the group that did the attack. Mending, yeah, M-E-N-D-I-N, I think that's, yeah.
So you never had a real name anywhere?
No, Mending is,
oh, okay,
yeah, but when people talk about it, everybody that know him will say Border Patrol.
Thank you very much for coming.
Do we gather from you that the NRC was the creation of the IGNU government?
Yes.
Source of funding came also from the IGNU government?
Yes.
And how certain or convinced were you that ECOMOG had signed on to this arrangement and decided to support it?
At the time we had that meeting in December, after the time I left Liberia, I was convinced. I didn't have any reason to dispute what they had told me.
What convinced you?
Well, let's say we saw enough to convince us that
What did
it
you
was
see?
going to be there. We saw sufficient evidence that ECOMOG was involved. We have a number of countries, a lot of these things are what you could consider classified information, and I think it would not be in the interest of Liberia's relationships with these countries and my own future for me to say I spoke to this person, that person, and I was convinced. But let's say we were convinced that this was a plan that
In
they
other
wanted to
words,
carry out.
you had direct engagement with top brass of the peacekeeping force at the time.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Can you give that to us tomorrow?
Then you're exposing him. You don't have to answer that. Okay, Mr. Witness, we want to tell you thank you very much for coming and sharing these moments of reflections and perspectives with us. Again, we extend to you sympathy for the death of your father and other very close relatives. Before you leave, is there anything else you finally want to say?
Yes, I want to first thank all of those that have made this possible, you, the Commission, the Advocate for Human Rights. I want to say that our country has experienced a terrible ordeal in which it's hard to find a person who's not been victimized, even some of the worst characters that we could think of, or at some point in some way also victimized, especially the child soldiers. We want to say that in order for us to move forward, we have to be serious about accountability. There's no question of allowing this culture of impunity to continue. We stand and anticipate your recommendations, and I hope that each and every one of you, I've heard that when you do your recommendations, you're done. I hope that each and every one of you would also make it a personal passion to see that those recommendations are implemented. Our country depends on it. This is the best vehicle we've been given. We have to make it work, but the centerpiece has to be accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much.